All right, welcome to Halitics. Yes, my mic was muted and then it wasn't muted and now it's muted or not muted. You can hear me. I can tell. I can see the levels bouncing up and down and they're not grayed out. 240-242-5646. Join me. Just 1 week until Election Day, the most important election ever, I guess is what people might call it. And I suppose it is important, but it's kind of weirdly important because, I mean, whoever will be the next president matters for sure, but is there not much difference, right? In the end, the policies between these two are tragically very similar, at least where it counts most, especially for a president, foreign policy. But in terms of also taking on corporate elites and financial elites, to the extent they're different, people who just control enormous amounts of money, not necessarily giant corporations, they're not. They won't. So, you know, I before I get into it, and I call it Keystone State is Key. That's today's program. It really probably will boil down to Pennsylvania. And Trump, very, very significant unforced error by the campaign there with this, quote, comic, unquote, telling stupid, bigoted jokes, giving him the benefit of the doubt, not say maybe they're not really racist, but clearly trying to appeal to people's worst instincts. Man, I mean, it shines a light. I hate to say this because I don't like to condemn groups or classes of people, and I think there are explanations that aren't particularly harsh or mean-spirited when describing, you know, for why people vote for Trump. I mean, I can understand why they do it, and I don't only attribute, as so many do on the left, nefarious, cruel motives, just as I don't say if you vote for Harris, you're a genocider, even though she is, and even though Trump almost certainly would be or will be if he takes office. But, you know, I think people vote for all sorts of reasons. Even when they vote for bad people, they do it for all sorts of reasons. So I haven't been quick to condemn Trump voters. I've been very, very slow, and I've always defended them, and I will continue to do so. But that said, hiring a comic to, you know, make cracks, and I'm not saying the Trump campaign vetted this guy Hinchcliffe. We'll play the clip in a little bit. I'm going to center Palestine, but it tells you something really, you know, it confirms the suspicion I think that many have that there's a significant racist if not, you know, racist or certainly bigoted aspect to the Trump campaign, much as the claim, the excuse for people voting for Trump back in 2016 by Hillary Clinton, where she referred to many of his supporters as deplorables, that certainly told you something about Hillary Clinton, her inability to, her complete lack of self-awareness, her failure to appreciate how harmful the policies that she pursued had been to so many people, her lack of any empathy or concern. That all was wrapped up in her deplorables comment, even if you could argue, and many did, oh, it's so true, they're such bad people. And yeah, I mean, sure, there's some supremacists, white supremacists, I suppose, were in Trump's campaign. But hey, when you want people to vote for you, you appeal to them in whatever way you think is most likely to reach them. You don't insult them. You don't attack them. You don't call them deplorable. And you don't say that they're from some garbage island unless you want to lose, right? I mean, it just seems so obvious, so self-evident to me. We'll get to that. Will Trump lose because of it? He might. I mean, I think this was such a very, very significant because, again, it tells us, or it feeds into a narrative that people have about Trump, right? Including the people he's trying to get to vote for him. All right. In the news from Gaza, incredibly grim. And, you know, I was talking to my wife yesterday, and she said something. I usually don't identify people that I talk to who give advice, but she said something. She said she came the closest anyone's ever come to getting me to really seriously consider voting for Kamala. And in fact, I really seriously did consider voting for Kamala, and it's still not a complete zero, but it's very unlikely, especially after the research I did for today's program, that I would vote for her. I mean, certainly not going to vote for Trump. So let's be real clear. I agree with Bernie, don't vote for Trump. I agree with Arlen, don't vote for Trump. I agree with pretty much everyone who says, well, that I talk to, because they all say don't vote for Trump. There are a few pro-Trump people that I certainly respect your posts. If you're in Halitics and some of the pro-Trump posters, I think, they make their arguments pretty well. And I don't condemn them, and I don't hold grudges or anything like that, but I'm not persuaded. And I'm not persuaded to vote for Harris either. And the argument, the position that my wife took isn't particularly favorable to Harris, even favorable vis-a-vis Trump. But what she said is, if Trump wins, he's very likely to have Congress with him. And that means he'll be able to do all sorts of really bad things. There won't be any constraints on him. If Harris wins, then she won't have Congress with her, presumably. It looks like the Senate is pretty likely now to go Republican, and very possibly Congress, the House, will as well. So Harris won't be able to do nearly as much harm. The problem is the way these two do harm is with foreign policy, and you don't need Congress with them. That's one of the reasons I ultimately wasn't persuaded. But remember when Obama tried to cut future Social Security payments? Like, that was his big idea. I can work across the aisle. I can work with the Republican Congress that, came to power, I believe, in 2010, right? He only had a Democratic Congress for 2 years, I believe. But his big idea was in 2012, when he was running for re-election, maybe we can tweak Social Security. We can reduce the increases due to inflation. We can tie it to, the certain commodities and certain costs and expenses and not others. And that will, slow the rise. That was his way of screwing retirees, right? Screwing future retirees, screwing you. That was the Obama solution to the problem. And Republicans just wouldn't give him a victory. Now, I'm sure that they like the policy fine. There are not a lot of Republicans who care about seniors who, the cat food commission, where you cut seniors back so much that the only way they can survive is on cat food. In fact, I know seniors who are struggling right now. I feel terrible for them. It's very, very upsetting for me to know some of these folks who worked hard and did everything they could right. And even if they didn't, it doesn't matter. You should have enough. You shouldn't be in debt. You shouldn't have to be working when you're 75 years old. But many people do. And it would be even worse if Obama had gotten his way in 2012. But the Republicans kiboshed that idea. They didn't want to give him a win for whatever reason. I don't know what that was about, frankly. So the advantage to electing Kamala is she won't have a Congress with her that can do all that much harm. They'll probably be standing in her way. Whereas if you elect Trump, he'll have these Republicans. They didn't do a lot of crap. They do a lot of really bad stuff. So that made me think, that's a good point. I'm kind of hear what you're saying. And I thought, maybe I should reconsider that vote for Kamala. After my research today, the way she has remained adamant, unwavering in her commitment to, now these aren't her words, these are mine, her unwavering commitment to the Israeli genocide, nope, can't do it. That's my red line in the sand, ultimately. And if it weren't my red line, there just isn't anything else there to cause me to think she'd be a good president. She'd be on the side of the poor, struggling, working people. There's just nothing there. So I can't vote for her. All right. From Gaza, terrible news. By the way, if you disagree, and I'd love to hear from you, 240-242-5646, what I do differently than everyone else is I really, really try. And I was so gratified by comments in Halitics on Facebook where people like stood up for me. Even people would really disagree with me, and there was some criticism like you censored me, you kept something from being published that I had posted, and there was a immediate no. Hal doesn't do that. Hal lets all people, all sides, and the only thing they don't let are the personal insults. I have had to pull posts that are personally insulting, and there's, I won't allow that. If you attack people in the group, especially if it's not me. Now, if it's me, I give more rope to people to attack me. I don't like the personal. I certainly don't like it if you go after me personally. I think it should be about the ideas. It should be your arguments. But, I get it. As one of my posters, most frequent posters said, hey, you make yourself a target. You're on there. You're on here. You're giving your opinion to everybody. You got to expect that people are going to go after you a little bit more. And you may not like it, but that's just the way it is. And I'm like, okay. I get it. I hear. But there's going to be a limit, right? You can't say anything you want about me, but you can say more negative about me anyway. I was very gratified that people were saying, hey, Hal is good about this. He lets people talk. He lets people give their opinion. That's why I do this, so we can unite in favor of solutions that will work. And I don't see Kamala Harris as in any way a solution who will work. Today in Gaza, 109 Palestinians killed by one Israeli airstrike. That's not the total death count. The day continues. We don't know. They're probably going to be, it's triple digits now. But that's the count as in just less than 24 hours in one strike by Israel. That's how awful what Israel is doing is. And we're going to talk a lot about that later in the program. Once we get through the reportage, the kind of top headlines from Gaza and the Middle East. Today, just Gaza. Just real quick, the death count, how awful it is. I'll get into Pennsylvania because that is the thumbnail. Keystone State. I said Keystone Kate. I don't know who is somebody named Keystone Kate. I don't know who Keystone Kate would be. But the Keystone State being key. And if you hear a little double audio, sorry about that. Just checking to confirm that, yes, everything is working correctly. And I got to do it that way. I don't always do that, but I did it just now. So in terms of yesterday in Gaza, not quite as bad, not as bad as today, only identified by MTV, which I believe is Morocco. I believe that's from the Moroccan television network, MTV. It's not the music television that we used to watch those videos. By the way, what happened to the MTV videos? I always loved watching those videos when I was a kid. I was in college at that point, I think, when they first really became big. High school, video killed the radio star, but then it was more college. Now they have these horrible series that are totally unwatchable. 41 Palestinians killed yesterday. Death count, according to MTV, 43,061 as of yesterday. Total since October 7. And we know that's going to be well over, probably close to 43,200 by tomorrow because of the attack on that building we just reported. So here's very round numbers. Again, we don't have the exact count. There's so many that are missing, wounded, what have you, who may die. Others who got that little green thing in there. I don't like that. 41 killed yesterday, just fiddling around over 43,000 Gazans. It's a horrible, horrible humanitarian tragedy. Crimes against humanity. We're all for that. We're part of that. We're supporting that. We're responsible for that. I heard somebody say, I can't remember who it was. It was very, very trenchant, where they said, yes, there may have been more deadly killing sprees by nations in my lifetime. And they mentioned Cambodia. Now, that's going back 50 plus years, right? Back to the early 70s when Richard Nixon began bombing Cambodia and just killing millions. And then the Rwanda genocide there, the the Hutus killing Tutsis, hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I think the count somewhere in the 700,000-800,000. I may be wrong about that. But the point was made, as awful as those were, and not to minimize the horror in any way, but as Americans, we're more responsible. We're responsible for, well, the Cambodian was our bombing, right? But then after that, you had the takeover of the country, where there was more murders, I believe, by Pol Pot. So yeah, you know, I think the Cambodian is in some ways a more instructive analogy, because it was our bombs that killed maybe not 1 million Cambodians, but many, many, many thousands of Cambodians. The genocide there was perpetrated by Pol Pot. We had so destabilized the country that it made it open to that. So it's, you know, I'm willing to say that's right there was what we did to Cambodia. But that was before, you know, I was a kid. I barely remember that. Yeah, I totally look this up. 214 tons of bombs we dropped on Cambodia. Complete failure, totally destroyed the infrastructure of that country and left it wide open for the genocide there. I don't have a death count from the bombing. I know there were, you know, many millions killed by Pol Pot. Here's what happened in Pennsylvania. I guess it was it the Madison Square Garden? I guess it was the Madison Square Garden rally, the MSG. People are saying that is kind of like when the Nazis, right? There was a German-American Bund. It was American Nazi Party rally in Madison Square Garden in 1939. And it was a lot of Jew baiting, a lot of, I've heard some, you know, statements from it. You know, I'm not Puerto Rican, so I'm not going to try to say this isn't the same. I know there was attacks on other groups. It wasn't really a focus on Puerto Ricans at the event. And at the same time, it wasn't like the featured speaker. It was just some jackass comic. That said, this is ugly stuff. It's short. I'm going to just play a very brief clip. I hate putting this stuff out there, but just so you know what I'm talking about if you haven't heard this.
I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
All right, so that's supposed to be funny, and then we'll continue with what the Wall Street Journal, how they describe it. Comedian Hinchcliffe made offensive jokes about Latinos, Black Americans, Arabs, and Jews during Trump's New York rally Sunday. So it wasn't just, I mean, you know, obviously if you're a comic like a Howard Stern and you're insulting everyone, you can get away with more, right? I mean, he was, if you know, Stern has sort of been rehabilitated now, but in the late 80s and 90s, there was a lot of really ugly racist crap on his program. And he got away with it in part because he would make fun of other people and other groups. But to me, that didn't make it okay, right? The floating island, I mean, why would you be so, well, he's trying to be funny. He's trying to build, he probably doesn't give a crap if he torpedoes Trump's re-election campaign. Did he? It's possible. Here's what I wouldn't rule it out. These are the kinds of major gaffes that can kill a candidate in a very, very, very close race. So according to Politico, the Puerto Rico fallout is spreading like wildfire in Pennsylvania. One of the excuses, and here's what I guess he's a Democrat. He must be a Democrat. I don't know if he's a Democratic operative. This is a radio station guy, Victor Martinez in Allentown, calls it a gift from the gods, noting Puerto Rican voters in the area have been on the fence about voting at all. There's no polling that I'm aware of subsequent to this, which I guess was, what was the rally? Was it Friday, Saturday? I don't even know, in Pennsylvania. There was one poll that came out, but the calls had been made prior. And in that poll, Trump was up by 1. A poll came out today where it's dead even. It's hard to see if that had any implications. I guess you'd have to poll Puerto Ricans. But since the race is so incredibly tight, just the swing of maybe even a few thousand votes could, even if you have a few thousand people who say, you know what, I'm not going to vote at all. Or if they weren't going to vote, now they're going to vote for Stein, not for Stein, they're going to vote for Harris. That could make the difference. This map, I think, kind of tells you where, at least, well, it does, I assume, tell you where this guy, Tegan Goddard, he's sort of a political guy. He does these maps and things and Political Wire. So Sunday, he has Trump winning. This is no toss-ups, right? He has Trump winning Pennsylvania. He had previously moved Michigan over from red to blue. End of last week, he moved Michigan to Trump. Not sure why, to Harris. Not sure why, but he did. So Sunday, he still has Trump winning 287, 251, no toss-ups. Then yesterday, actually, I noticed yesterday afternoon, but after my program with Arlen, he had moved PA into the blue camp. So in those 2 days, or really one, Sunday to Monday, and I have it Tuesday because I just did this today, Pennsylvania swung from Trump to Harris. Now, I couldn't find one poll, right? Usually when that happens, it's a new poll comes out, right? That says, hey, previously Harris was up by 1 and now Trump's up by 1. Or vice versa. That could cause the shift because obviously this is just a guesstimate. It's not scientific in any way. But there was nothing that I could find, no news. No other website had changed any projections. 538 still has Trump 54% of the time winning, 46%, of the time giving it to Harris. So there was no shift at 538. There was no shift at Real Clear Politics. There were no new polls that I could find anywhere. And yet, Goddard there at Political Wire moved Pennsylvania over. So my suspicion is just that one remark, which is getting an awful lot of attention in the Keystone State, has been deemed, according to Goddard, who I think is kind of plugged in, as quite possibly a change maker. The Baltimore Sun, this is an AP article that they published. Latin superstar Bad Bunny is now behind Harris. And he's not just Latin. I believe he's Puerto Rican. He has now come out in favor of Harris. And I was thinking, well, was it because of this? And apparently it was. I mean, you just lost the kind of Taylor Swift of Puerto Rico. That's how big this guy is. He's huge. He's huge. This can make a real difference. Now, Politico says, I don't know the demographics of Pennsylvania. I was not aware of the fact that Puerto Ricans are a relatively sizable percentage of Pennsylvania, but they are. So this, again, you got to, well, first of all, I mean, I'm not, look, too bad. I don't care. Trump, you lose because of this. That's, on you. But it feeds into the narrative. It confirms for so many people the suspicion that Trump doesn't give a crap about Puerto Ricans, that he doesn't care about the island, that he looks down on it. Now, I know he didn't tell the joke. I know he wasn't on stage. I don't know if there's any video of him like laughing like a hyena, but it's his rally. It's the kind of, quote, joke that his supporters supposedly would find amusing. It looks really, really bad. All right, this guy Schellenberger, I don't know what kind of a journalist he is. I guess in a way he's kind of like me. He's kind of a gadfly. He kind of criticizes both sides as far as I can tell. He's pretty harshly critical of the, quote, liberal media. His excuse for all of this is that, well, there's a lot of trash in Puerto Rico. They aren't cleaning it up. This is really, really bad. And it is true, I guess. I don't know. I've never been to Puerto Rico, so I can't say. But my understanding is, yes, just like the rest of it, just like everywhere else. The garbage isn't being collected like it should be, and it's piling up, and it doesn't look good, right? So there's the picture that he put up there. Media claiming the joke was racist about Puerto Ricans. He was poking fun at the island's infamous trash problem. Well, are you buying that? I'm not. I'm just not going to buy that. I'm not going to say that there wasn't a racist element, that we're mocking people from this island, that we're analogizing them to garbage. Now, if I were voting for Trump, would I not vote for him because of this? Probably it wouldn't change my vote, because after all, he did not tell the joke, right? He didn't. Now, I'm not voting for Trump, so would it? But it probably wouldn't impact on my vote. And that's one of the reasons I'm not confident that this will cost Trump Pennsylvania. He didn't call them, the people from Pennsylvania, garbage the way Hillary did call voters deplorables. She called individuals deplorables. Right? So it's a little tiny bit different. He didn't directly insult them. Also, the kind of people who would vote for Trump, Puerto Rican or otherwise, are probably the kind of people who aren't going to be all upset about something of this in this nature, right? They're not going to be as sensitive. But look, it pissed off Bad Bunny. He's an angry bunny right now. And you got to be worried, man. You got to be really concerned. I'd like anybody's thoughts on this. 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. The idea, the argument by Schellenberger, he was just making fun of all the garbage that isn't collected in Puerto Rico. Well, look, I've been to Manhattan when their trash is everywhere, and it is a mess. It really is. But I wouldn't expect Manhattan to be called an island of garbage by a presidential candidate who was trying to get their votes of the people who live there. You just wouldn't say it, right? You're visiting. It is not great sometimes there, and people do make fun of New York, but ultimately you want the votes of people. You don't make fun of their hometown. You don't make fun of their home island. Bad Bunny shares a 45 million video to 45 million followers showing Harris. That's got to help her, right? There's few hundred thousand, almost certainly in Pennsylvania, of those 45 million Instagram followers. And Hinchcliffe, if you're going to say, well, he was just trying to be funny about how there's all this trash that isn't being collected in Puerto Rico, you got to note that he also said these Latinos, they love making babies and they don't use the pull-out birth control method. So very condescending, very obnoxious. I guess he's making a joke, the pull-out meaning, they come to the United States and they don't go back, right? That's sort of what his joke is about, the pull-out, I assume. But again, tone deaf. This isn't... I don't want to make too much of this. I'm not... It just is, again, emblematic of what terrible choices we have in this election. You know, and some people say, well, you're overdoing it, how maybe it's not that big a deal. I would say that. I would say that if Trump had demonstrated over time that he was a compassionate, caring guy who had gone out of his way, who had acted selflessly, or even if he had simply been, as president, had shown, you know, putting aside whether he's really selfless, but he had simply, let me see, I want to make sure. Yeah, I had said Bad Bunny was Puerto Rican, and I wanted to be absolutely certain of that because I didn't remember checking that fact. But yes, he was born in Puerto Rico. So that's important because this is a Puerto Rican speaking to Puerto Ricans, a Puerto Rican American. Well, that's redundancy because Puerto Rico is part of the United States. But he's a Puerto Rican speaking to Puerto Rican voters, and he's incredibly powerful and influential in terms of his reach. And I think far, far more so, by the way, than some of these others that also support Kamala. Jennifer Lopez and Mark Anthony. Those are like your grandparents or maybe your parents. Those are my generation. They're not young, plugged in, hot, young voters who may be on the fence, who are the ones who have been leaning or at least certainly contemplating a vote for Trump. They don't care. Those young voters, they don't care about Jennifer Lopez. They don't care. Mark Anthony, I honestly don't think that he's got much sway. Now, I'm not Puerto Rican, so maybe I'm wrong. But I don't hear the juice. This guy, Bad Bunny's got juice. Especially among people whose votes could be influenced, could be changed, could be modified. So, yeah, man, if you're Trump, you're sweating this. No question. No question. And it is so reflective, again, of his bad policies. This is really why it hurts. Because when Hurricane Maria hit back in 2017, his response was horrific. It was awful. It was condescending. It was dismissive. It was like, well, you know, they'll take care of themselves. Who cares? They're overstating the number of people killed. The money wasn't released. $13 billion in assistance doesn't get released when the hurricane hits or in the aftermath. Oh, it's a big island. It's hard to forget. Remember, it's a big ocean. It's a big ocean out there. It's hard to get, which was true. It wasn't completely false when he said, well, it's hard for us to get the aid there. But he didn't seem to give a crap. He was making excuses. There was no concern expressed. So this all is consistent, right, with the narrative that Trump is indifferent at best and very likely downright hostile to the interests of Latinos. It's going to hurt him, man. This is not going to help this guy at all. All right, we got another video up. We're going to go to Palestinian story in a moment. Katie Halper with a really cool video there, which doesn't quite support, you know, her view or my view that the Gaza genocide, Israel's genocide in Gaza, should be a test, a litmus test, right? I mean, Katie Halper's totally against Kamala. She's not going to vote for Kamala under any circumstances. She has a Palestinian activist on her program, and he kind of takes a little wind out of her sails when it comes to why this election is or isn't as important as she, Katie, and I believe. So let's play this video. You may be interested. Again, call in at any time, 240-242-5646. I did invite a guest, but I'm pretty confident they're not calling, but maybe they will. We'll see. Here we go. Let's play this video for you.
A lot of this seems like a show, just another American show. I do believe that to some extent, the president is a temporary hire. So I don't think the U.S. policy will change over Israel-Palestine. I mean, both of them are pro-Israeli. Both of them have to answer to the AIPAC lobby. But I do believe that if the Democratic Party at some point will have, maybe not with this election, maybe with the next election, will have a nominee that is just pro-life, man. When Americans say pro-life, why is it just about abortion? Why?
But I want to stop it there, because that was another reason, that comment by him, when Americans say pro-life, why does it have to be about abortion? I so agree with that sentiment, right? I want to call myself pro-life so badly. I want to be able to say, one of the reasons I support, and I just resized that a little bit, one of the reasons I support Jill Stein for president is because she's the one truly pro-life candidate running for president. I want to be able to say that, but I really can't, because the term pro-life has been co-opted by the anti-choice movement. And if I said, when I say pro-life, I mean pro-biodiversity, I mean pro-human life that's here. And frankly, I do mean pro-quote, unborn, unquote, life, meaning that we should have the kind of medical support for pregnant women as we do as other countries do. And yes, and I think it's pro-life to say, hey, you've got a risky pregnancy, or you've got simply an unwanted pregnancy, and it's early days, it's the first trimester, it's the first month, it's the first or 6 weeks, then yeah, I think it's pro-life to say, okay, you don't want to have a child at this time of your life. Okay, then you don't have to. We're going to take, we'll have that, you can have that abortion and the government will pay for it. I do believe that is even pro-life. I certainly could make that argument. So I hate this claim, or the way the term has been taken over by the pro-life movement. And I wanted to play this clip in part, quote, anti-abortion. The term pro-life has been co-opted by the anti-abortion movement. That's a huge problem. I agree with him. Pro-life means you don't give bombs to Israel. You don't lend bullets and machine guns and missiles to combatants in war, rather than trying to do everything possible to stop the killing. So Trump and Kamala are both pro-death. This guy says, hey, it's not that important. It's not that relevant. It's true as far as he's going, but he seems to be minimizing in a way the role of the American president. He also, to my way of thinking, is making excuses for Democrats. Let's play that.
A pro-life president be like pro people that were born already. How about that? Why is that not part of the discourse in America? So once you have a president like that, I'm not going to call them a pro-Palestinian president. I'm just going to call them a pro-life, nominee. I'm pretty sure that at least at the Democratic Party, they will get the nomination.
So he's saying in 4 years, or maybe 8, the next Democratic presidential nominee might well be pro-life because of the primaries, right? That there would be a primary process and we would have some influence, some say. I think that's really important. I think that's really valuable, what he's saying. I don't think it's an excuse or or it justifies voting for Harris in this election, however. That she's not pro-life. She's clearly not pro-Palestinian life. So I can't see that justifying in any way a vote for Harris. But I do think it's important to bear in mind that, yes, voters didn't choose her. She didn't win any primaries. She wasn't challenged. If there had been, and this is one of the reasons it's quite plausible to claim, to insist even, that Democratic elites planned it all out. We're not going to have any real viable primary process. We're just going to anoint Joe Biden to be the nominee for re-election. And then, if he's a little bit demented and he's befuddled, then we'll deal with it then. And if that means we get rid of him and we put Kamala in his place, that's all. That's fine. That's good because we know we can control her. We know she'll support the genocide. We know she'll support corporate America. We know that if she starts talking about raising taxes on rich people, we can rein her in, which we've done. So I think that makes a lot of sense when you frame it that way. If there had been a primary, a real viable primary process, somebody would have come out and been very, very much against arming Israel, and probably against continuing the Ukraine war as well without pushing aggressively for peace. And that candidate would have gotten a lot of support and might well have won. I don't know who that candidate would have been. I can't even identify one because there's no one in the Democrat Party who really stands out as super pro-peace. I know some of you would say, well, Marianne Williamson, she wasn't. At the start of the primary season last year, Marianne Williamson said she agreed with Biden's policies in Ukraine, and she pretty much agreed with the Israeli policy as well. Bernie would have been almost certainly too old. I don't think he would have run. So I don't know that there was a pro-peace Democrat clearly identifiable then. But I'll bet somebody, if they saw that opening, that lane to be the pro-peace candidate, I hope there would have been a Democrat who would have tried to occupy it and may have gotten an awful lot of support. But that problem for the Democratic establishment, the DNC, that never arose because they had Joe Biden there as we got to stick with old Joe, don't change horses in midstream. They scared all the potential challengers to Biden off, anyone who had any credibility. But if it had been Kamala, if Biden said, I'm stepping down, maybe you would have seen, maybe even an Elizabeth Warren. Who knows? She might have been, she hasn't stood out. She hasn't been in any way a champion of life. But maybe she would have been a little bit, maybe she would have found a little bit of guts. But that never happened because first there was Biden and then there was Kamala and there was no one in. All right, Bernie's going to explain for you. Now, see, this is the first part. Okay, so, yeah, Bernie, not great. Let me just show, but we don't need to show that part yet. We'll do this. So I mentioned I wanted to have a guest on. I didn't get the person. Maybe they're trying, I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to highlight some social media posts that really stood out at me about Gaza, Israel, because to me this is the big kahuna. This is the elephant you can't escape, and we shouldn't escape. It's our full-blown, full-on support for genocide. So I saw this post on Facebook I want to share with you. I'm going to also urge you before I go through it. Hey, don't forget, if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to Halitics. And please, on YouTube, be a Halitics subscriber. That's all. It's very easy. Click the bottom right on your screen. That's it. Nothing else you have to do. It's, so simple, even a child can do it. So this person posts on Facebook, it's not genocide. It's decidedly not genocide. And this, what they call not propaganda, is the claim that Hamas is using Palestinians as human shields. They say, no, it's true. It's true. It's not propaganda. All right. So in response to the argument that Israel is not committing genocide, let's go to Bernie. Bernie supports Harris. He's a full-on supporter of Harris. He's saying you should vote for Kamala Harris. Here's what he has to say.
Did not have the right to wage an all-out war against the entire Palestinian people.
All right, let me stop it there. Bernie is describing what Israel is doing in Gaza and the West Bank as well, because there are Palestinians in the West Bank, He calls it an all-out war against the Palestinian people. Okay, that's a genocide. You go to war against a people, people based on who they are as individuals. That's a genocide. That's what the Nazis did. The book, one of the most famous books about the Holocaust, The War Against the Jews. Bernie is just describing the war against Palestinians.
Did not have the right to kill 42,000 Palestinians, 2/3 of whom were children, women, and the elderly, or injure over 100,000.
And remember, this is all and counting. It's not like it is over. It's going on now.
It did not have the right to destroy Gaza's infrastructure, housing, and healthcare system. It did not have...
All right, so you destroy their housing, their infrastructure system, their healthcare. That's genocide. That's genocide. Destroying their entire education system. That's genocide.
Every one of Gaza's 12 universities. It did not have the right to block humanitarian aid, causing massive malnutrition in children and, in fact, starvation.
Okay, again, genocide. This is genocide. Plain and simple. It's genocide funded by the Harris-Biden administration.
And that is why I am doing everything.
All right, and I'm doing everything I can to block it. So we didn't need to hear that. But the point of this, of playing that clip, was if you don't believe me, then believe Bernie when he tells you what Israel is doing. Now, he doesn't call it genocide, but if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it talks like whatever it is, it's a duck. That's what Israel is doing. So there's more from this person on Facebook that just really irritated me. So I felt I had to respond to it, and here's the best place for me to do it. Defending what Israel's doing, this person defending what Israel's doing, the killing of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. I'm not a fan of Bibi, but I don't not know for sure he might use more humane tactics. So what I struggle to understand, but now I understand what he's saying, or what they're saying. They're saying maybe this isn't the best way to go about it, right? Maybe this isn't the best way to, as they put it, want to eradicate Hamas. But I'm not sure. Maybe there's no more humane tactics you could use. Wow. You just heard what Bernie said. Women, children, elderly, all being killed in huge numbers, residences, hospitals, infrastructure, all being destroyed, necessary aid not getting in. We've seen the pictures. It's all been laid into rubble. Now, I want to be clear here. Of course, you couldn't use more inhumane tactics, but of course, I get you want to eradicate Hamas. After all, they did kill 1,200 Israelis on October 7th. But here's the answer to that. You want to get rid of Hamas? Stop persecuting Palestinians. Stop oppressing Palestinians. Stop keeping Palestinians in an open-air concentration camp between the desert and the sea. That's how you will get rid of Hamas. Why is this so hard? Why is this so frigging hard? What is the matter with us that we make excuses for mass murder? What is the matter with us? So more. That's what Hamas does. It hides. He attacks them for being, for using civilians as human shields. Well, they do live amongst the Gazans, right? They're part of Gaza. Does he want Hamas to all go stand in a circle in the middle of, some square and just say, oh, we're right here, Israel, go ahead and bomb us? Is that what he's trying to say? It's a bizarre, it doesn't make sense to me. And then there's more. The Israelis are not trying to kill every Palestinian. Why? The evidence is so powerful that they are. But if that's what they want to do, it would be relatively easy for them to do it. All right, let's get into that. The Nazis spent years and years with expressly trying to kill every Jew that they, was in Europe. They did. They tried and they killed an awful lot. They didn't kill everyone. And that war against the Jews began probably in earnest in 1941. And it went on for 4 years. And they killed maybe 5 million. Israel has been going for about a year. There aren't 10 million Jews or 10 million Palestinians. There's maybe 2 million. Israel may have killed a tenth of those. That's the guess. They've completely laid waste to the entire region. I don't know how much more killing they can do. They're killing awfully fast. It's not relatively easy to wipe out a population of people. They're doing their best. They're doing their best. All right, the argument that because Hamas is using Palestinians as human shields, that justifies, I guess, Israel putting bullets through the shield, right, to get to the person behind the shield. We already have been through this. It's Israel that's using Palestinians as human shields. It's Israel that takes Palestinian children and says, you go into that building first. Not Hamas. That's what Israel does. So if you're condemning the use of human shields and you're saying that justifies 40, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 Palestinian deaths, then presumably the fact that Israel is using Palestinians as human shields justifies anything that Hamas does to any Israeli, right? Kamala's all in for this. She completely supports it. We got play a video for it in a little bit. But, the argument somehow that it's just easy to murder, to commit mass murder, which Israel is doing, it's not true. Humans are capable of extraordinary cruelty, but it also can hurt the perpetrators too. Some of whom maybe didn't quite know what they were getting themselves in for. So this story from CNN, and by the way, you can see the CNN pro-Israel propaganda throughout this story, but the truth comes through. Elron Mizrahi, Israeli soldier, committed suicide recently. Israeli soldiers returning from a war struggle with trauma and suicide. This is very similar, by the way, to what was seen by the Nazis. Some of their soldiers, their Wehrmacht and their SS, they couldn't handle all the killing either. The story, according to CNN, this came out last week, so it's very fresh, right? 1 week ago and one day, Monday the 21st. The story contains details of suicide and violence that some may find upsetting. If you're not upset by this, you're not a human being, okay? Everyone will find this upsetting. 40-year-old father of 4 is deployed to Gaza after, and of course, look at how they start, the deadly Hamas-led attack, right? So we're at CNN, we're going to tell you really, really bad stuff that Israel's doing. Genocide, in fact. We're going to tell you, but we're going to try our hardest to minimize it, to reduce the horrors of Israelis' actions, to make it seem like it's sort of justified. So the first thing we're going to do is tell you this all happened because of Hamas. not because Israel's been occupying Palestine, not because Israel's been killing Palestinians, not because Israel's been sexually assaulting Palestinians for decades. No, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to say it all began on October 7th. So he went, though, to Gaza, and he returned a different person, traumatized, struggling with PTSD, and then he killed himself. So what exactly do we know about that suicide? He was a bulldozer. This guy was a construction worker. So unsurprisingly, his responsibility. By the way, you know, those bastard super religious, ultra orthodox who are behind a lot of this, right? Because they're the ones who go in with the settlements and are propagandizing and calling the Palestinians animals. They don't even have to go do this. They don't have to go kill other people or be killed, which is very rare. If you're Israeli, you're very unlikely to be killed. So this construction worker is sent in there to drive a bulldozer. But it's not your normal bulldozer. It's an armored vehicle that you can drive without getting blown up. He's in there, and you can see some of, I guess, his work or the work of others. You can see the utter wasteland that Israel has left behind. And this is from the story. So you probably send bulldozers in there to clear out the rubble and do other things. The rubble that's the direct result of American weapons supplied by Harris Biden and bombs dropped by and missiles launched by Israel, our closest ally. That's what we've done. That's what the U.S. is responsible for. I will not vote for Kamala Harris. If you say to vote for Kamala Harris, you got to justify this. You got to say, well, this is why it's okay to vote for somebody who does this to another country. Now, I would note that one of the ways that Democrats have mocked Trump and his supporters is by saying, hey, remember when Trump said he could stand on Fifth Avenue and kill somebody and shoot somebody and they'd still vote for him? Kamala Harris is absolutely complicit in a genocide. And many of you are going to vote for her. How is that? Isn't that even worse than what Trump said about his voters? She's a mass murderer. She's a war criminal. You're going to vote for that? I'm not going to vote for that. Brianna Joy Gray asked if Kamala Harris had killed, that's her terminology, 200,000 Jews, would you still vote for her? It's a pretty good question, right? It's a pretty fair question. If she had killed 200,000 Jews, and she's killed, now we know the number isn't 200,000, so north of the confirmed kill over 40,000, people who are on the ground. You see the imagery. It's not hard to believe there's 200,000 dead. That's what all of Gaza looks like. That's what all of Gaza looks like. So Brianna Joy Gray asks, if she had killed 200,000 Jews, would you still vote for her? The argument I've heard, by the way, which kind of made me, okay, well, maybe she just can't say she wouldn't do it. Maybe it's in the back of her mind. As soon as she wins the election, in her acceptance speech, she's going to talk about how she's going to end the war right now. She's going to cut off Bibi. She's going to tell Joe he's got to cut off Bibi right now. That's sort of in my mind. Let's say that happened. Okay, well, that's good. We'd be glad it happened. Doesn't excuse this. It doesn't make it okay that this happened. But she's not going to do that. Unless you just don't believe her, unless you think she's a liar. All right, back to our suicidal bulldozer driver. Bulldozer driver. This is what his friend from the army said. We saw very, very, very difficult things that are difficult to accept. Well, that's what Nazis would say, right? That was like, we're the heroes because we're going to do what other people won't do. We'll just kill all these Jews. We'll wipe them off the planet. So the friend describing what it was like said, Zakin, he described the the psychological trauma. And this is how he described what he did. We had to run over terrorists. So he's in his bulldozer, the man who committed suicide, and also his friend says, we had to run them over. He calls them all terrorists, right? The people he run over, they're terrorists. So this is, again, it's okay. There's a lot of trauma, but we had to do it. And we're heroes in a way because these were terrorists. So we're running them over, dead and alive. Wasn't pretty. Everything squirts out. But they were terrorists, so what choice did we have? How about not being there at all? How about giving them their own country? Or what you really have to do is incorporating them in as full citizens, as part of the state of Israel, as part of a truly democratic nation. How about you do that? Remember, CNN can't fully describe for you in all its unvarnished horrors what Israel's doing. So they're coming up with sort of justifications. The people we ran over, everything squirts out. Even if they were alive, well, they were terrorists. And Zakin maintains the vast majority were terrorists. There's no such thing as citizens, he said, referring to the ability of Hamas fighters to blend with civilians. This is terrorists. Okay, well, my guess is just about everyone there hates you and wants to kill you. And you would feel exactly the same way if the situation was reversed. But you're the occupier. You're the oppressor. You're the persecutor. You're the representative of the first world apartheid state. Get the F out of there now. What's Kamala's response? You can have all the bombs and guns and missiles you want. Vast majority, terrorists. This 14-year-old boy, Muhammad, let's see, got his name on here. Muhammad Abdullah, Muhammad Kanan, 14 years old, West Bank, shot and killed by a sniper. Was he a terrorist? If he was, is that okay to kill him? 14-year-old boy? I guess he probably was, right? Israel says we only kill terrorists. Maybe he was SHIELD. Muhammad Abdullah Muhammad Kanan, 14, was shot and killed by an Israeli sniper at a refugee camp right outside, the entrance to a refugee camp. He had to be in the refugee camp because Israel destroyed his home. And then another teenager, Lujain Osama Abdul Rauf Mosleh, was killed. She was inside her home. She was shot through a window. That's what Nazis did. That's what genociders do. That's what Israel is doing. You don't think Israel is a genocidal state? I know I've done some reading. I've done a lot of reading. I've tried to find as much information as I can also about the psychology of the killers, not just the victims during the Holocaust. And it's hard to find, and I can't say this is necessarily the most credible source. I got this stuff from Reddit, but the underlying facts as set out in the Reddit post are confirmed. There was an American psychiatrist, Robert J. Lifton. He did monitor the psychological makeup of the accused, in other words, the Nazis at the Nuremberg war crimes. He did talk to Nazi guards, SS men, and the like. He did write about it. So to the extent that that could be confirmed by me in advance of this program, it was. In the book, The Zone of Interest by Martin Amis about Auschwitz, which is been lauded, praised as incredibly well researched, although it is a historical novel. He includes some of the same descriptions as Lifton apparently did. So Lifton talks to an unnamed Nazi psychiatrist who treated members of the Einsatz group, and those are the German Nazis who went in and shot Jews in Europe, in Russia. And these were the symptoms that they got as a result of what they were doing. Just shooting innocent people in the head. Severe anxiety, nightmares, tremors, numerous bodily complaints. Half of the ones who talked to this psychiatrist said it's unpleasant. That's as much as they would say. But the other half said they feel bad. They feel guilty. 20% of all of the killers, the murderers for hire that the Nazis employed, were feeling those feelings. So that's exactly what the Israeli suicide Mizrahi felt. Exactly the same description. The inability to sleep, the guilt. This is how CNN describes it. When he was on leave, bouts of anger, sweating, insomnia, social withdrawal. No one will understand what I saw. And his family, his sister said, or mother said, maybe he killed somebody, for all we know. Here's the difference. If you're an American, we fought the Nazis. We defeated them. We exposed the horrors of the Nazi genocide to the world. Now we are committing the same crimes. Now Harris, Biden are committing the same crimes. It's not enough to say, well, Trump would be worse. A, we don't know that. B, I'm not sure how you could be worse. And C, don't vote for Trump. Don't support Trump. He's bad too. There's a limit. There's a line. The Democratic Party is giving us a turd sandwich. I ain't going to eat it. Say it's a ham on Swiss. I ain't going to do that. Even if the alternative is a turd sandwich with urine on top. I'm going to eat the first sandwich. (240-242-5646) if you want to join me. We're over the hour, but I just want to finish this off. I want to play this video. I don't need to show you this. I want to play this. We'll end with this. For those of you who are still think I'm kind of being too hard on Harris, that she might change, she might turn on a dime if she gets elected. This is a video. This was put together by, I think, is it Young Black Voter? Not quite clear. Here we go. I got to get the video. It'll take just a sec, folks. Sorry about that. God, I had it in this lately because I do them in different ways. So here we go.
Withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel. That's what a lot of people on the progressive left.
So the question is, would you do anything differently? What would you do differently?
To do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. Get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done.
Everybody heard that, right? No change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense.
She told you no. Uncommitted movement. She said no.
Important that this issue be front and center in the presidential dialogue. Yet between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, for that matter, and Donald Trump, they are really in agreement that, they will stand by Israel, certainly to the last Israeli and potentially to the last American, standing up for the American people who pay the price here, because the massive war machine, the endless war machine here in this country, uses half of our congressional budget. So the American people, in spite of the amazing wealth that this country has, the American people are in very bad shape with regard to healthcare and housing and education and debt. So the American people are struggling and, very much want a policy that will meet their needs as well as reining in the war.
All right, that'll do it for today on Halitics. Tomorrow, Chuck Pinocchio joins me, friend of the show, great activist, and Kamala Harris supporter. I'll be back tomorrow.